And we got a guest on the line, Mark Stross. He's America's technologist. He's a leading chief technology officer. He's an author, speaker, radio contributor. His passion has always been innovating, breaking barriers, and helping our culture engage with technology in a meaningful way, or meaningful ways, plural. And he's on the line. His website is markstross.com. Hey, Mark, how you doing this morning?
Good morning, Dan. That is too nice. Thank you so much. I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. And I got to ask you, Mark, are we going to be able, will humanity survive technology? In other words, I think social media has been devastating in a way to our society. When you look at, iPhones, iPads, how shiny things distract us. For example, income inequality is worse than ever. It's worse than it was during the Gilded Age. But during the Gilded Age, they didn't have iPhones or iPads. And they focused on, we don't have a future either. What do you think, Mark?
You know, we always forget history, don't we, when we have a conversation like this? Because I guess when the printing press was invented, it was the end of civilization.
That's true.
Once you could start sharing information, God forbid. And now we got these new shining objects, and again, we're going through the same intellectual dilemma. Are we messing it all up, or are we evolving? Now, I prefer to think of it as messy evolution. How's that? To coin a phrase? That's what we are. We're messy and evolving.
But yeah, I could go along with that. But are we evolving or devolving? There's a shortage of high school officials across America, and the reason for that is because how mean the parents are. Not that they boo or disagree with the call. It's they will get on the court and they will threaten the life of officials, or just cuss them unrelentlessly. And it's almost like the bravery of being out of range. Our civilization seems like it's very uncivil these days. It's why I think, are we really evolving or devolving, Mark?
You know, I would love to tell the audience the headline that we're devolving, but then if you looked at the 60s and looked at the riots in the 60s, and if you had been watching Walter Cronkite, you would have actually assumed that American civilization was coming to its end, especially during the protests over Vietnam. We are at another point after 2010, in this real start of the smartphones with the iPhone, and then after we had the consolidation of technology into social media and then into these mega apps like TikTok and WhatsApp, etc., what you're starting to see happen is you're starting to see us have a very small amount of people have incredible power, created with that power these things that billions of people interact with every single day. And we're only now really discussing what are the rules of all of this. We created it, but now we have to actually create the rules for it. And it's very messy to create rules after you've created the monster. It's like, first of all, you bring a monster to New York and then you decide to build a zoo. I mean, it's backwards. And that is why we're having so many issues. Unexpected consequences of social media is addiction. And most of America now is addicted in some way. People don't like to be called addicts, but unfortunately, and I'm not being controversial here, we all have addictive tendencies when it comes to our devices. And I don't think there's anyone who can really argue that point. I hope not.
Mark Stross, our guest. The website is markstross.com. In your book, Killer Tech, you talked about how global corporations use our online activity to shape the way that we think. And the way, I believe that we're a fascist society today. I think the corporations have bought the government, they bought the Supreme Court, and they use this technology. I mean, Hitler, for example, what he pulled off with his propaganda was amazing, and he had nowhere near the tools they have today. I think our society's been gaslit here in America for 50 years, and I think we are mentally ill because of it, and because of the technology today. Now we got to deal with things like AI technology, to where we could put a video out of a politician, and it's not really him, but it looks like him, it looks like her. It's the hurdles are getting higher, I think, Mark. What about a digital bill?
I want to make it.
Yes, I know in your book you talked about a digital bill of rights.
Absolutely. So the reason why I hesitate to scare everyone with the knowledge, for example, that I transact with and think about, is because I've always seen the human spirit persevere above what we expected of ourselves of that time in history. This is throughout history. And I'm not opposed to your assumption right now that we're in a pretty grim moment in history. We are. I mean, if the Ukraine war is not considered a world war, then our definitions have really changed. If we're giving arms and NATO's giving arms and we're all collaborating on the West, and then there's an Eastern bloc that's collaborating with Russia and giving arms, and there are multiple countries involved, that is a world war. Multiple countries are involved. But today, we like to play around with words. We like to wordsmith. What is the Ukraine war? You look at the media and it's wordsmithed to death, right? But to really talk about what's really going on, and now we've got, we've got pirates in the Middle East and through the Straits, and we're now starting to get into just routine bombing of different countries because we don't like what's going on, or because we have pirates boarding international ships. And then we fast forward to another section of the world where you now have huge countries threatening other countries because they believe they have the sovereign right to do so or to be in those territories. And all of this is occurring for the very first time in history with real-time information being actually conceived in real time. Let me share just a real quick story to make my point. 2 weeks ago, YouTube was attacked for a suit from a headline that suggested that YouTube was making computers sweat and slowing computers down because of ad blocking. And there was an outrage on YouTube, absolute outrage, instantaneous outrage from this headline. But it turned out it was the actual ad blockers that were actually doing the harm to people's computers, but YouTube took the complete hit. The reason I'm using this particular story is to kind of show that we're whipped up in such a frenzy because of social media. We don't even wait for the facts to come in before we've proclaimed a good guy and a bad guy. And then when we've done that, we're already on the side. And that is what's dividing us. One of the things I try to do with the book that is going to be coming out very shortly, you actually had a pre-release than the Killer Tech, but in Killer Tech, Drive to Save Humanity, we talk about a digital bill of rights to give people the option to delete their mistakes, to give people the option to kind of slow the whole thing down, to take back some ownership. You know, with digital rights management, all the rights of people's stuff has gone over to the corporations. What I'm going to attempt to do is to help people take back their rights by taking back their data and actually owning it. And this is the one thing that I think has made people very insecure, is not only do we have a incredible AI revolution where the devices in our hands are becoming far smarter than we are, but we don't own anything. We are only one subscription away from losing everything. That creates an insecurity. It creates a terrible feeling that really we're useless. That what's the point?
Yeah,
You can't really own anything.
That's right.
Why?
Mark Stross is our guest. He's the author of Killer Tech and the Drive to Save Humanity. Now, the book was released just a few days ago, and it's available on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, in fine bookstores everywhere, as they would say, although there are not many fine bookstores anymore, but you can get it on Amazon and at Barnes & Noble. And Mark, you're right, the 60s, well, JFK, they blew his head off. They blew his brother's head off. They shot and killed Martin Luther King, Malcolm X. There were so many assassinate murders, and so many of the facts point to it was actually the U.S. government responsible for these things. And you had the pushback with the young people. Then you had Dayton. Four shot dead in Ohio is not just a song, folks. So yes, and then I've read to where J. Edgar Hoover, the piece of crap with the FBI, said we can never let this happen again. We can never let these young people have this much knowledge and this much power to push back the way that they did in the 60s. And now fast forward to today, to me, Mark, and I know you'll disagree with me if you don't agree, so I don't have to say that, other than to say that you've got to be in the moment to be able to think, to be able to actually compute information. And we have such a problem today to staying in the moment. How do you take back control of your digital life? And how do you do it? I mean, people waste a lot of time on YouTube. They get sucked into a video, and it'll go, once those algorithms hit, it'll go right to the next one, and it'll keep you engaged. So how do you stay in the moment today and break free of that addiction?
Well, that whole equation of how you break an addiction is the first thing you have to do is to admit you have a small problem. So one of the things that I do is I ask people, listen, can you put down your device and actually walk away from it for a whole day without being tugged towards it? If you start to feeling tugged towards it because you need it, then just start to admit you maybe have a bit of an addiction. Once you admit you have an addiction, then you can start dealing with it as I have to take some proactive steps to make myself better. And people should really start to, in my opinion, restrict the amount of social media they take in, because if you have thousands of programs that are dedicated to trying to addict you to stay on those platforms, perhaps it would be fun to take a little break from having thousands of programmers trying to influence your brain. I think we take that for granted, that a break from the social media is actually a break from manipulation. It's a break from the system, the big tech companies trying to influence you.
Mark Stross is our guest. He's the author of the book Killer Tech, and the Drive to Save Humanity. Doc, Coach, you got anything?
Well, he raises an interesting point. This tech stuff, the screen time is causing neurological damage in small children who should not be exposed to screen time. It diminishes their imagination. It diminishes the development of their imagination. It interferes with their ability to communicate and interact with their friends. It is becoming a serious problem. It may have some benefits, but there are definitely serious drawbacks with it. So I hope society turns away from so much screen time and gets a healthier approach to all this. What do you think, Coach?
Yeah, there are some good things, Coach and Doc. Like I rebuilt my motor in my car over the weekend by watching YouTube. But then the other part of that, I'm kidding, I didn't do that.
Make sure we don't get the car with Dan today.
That's right.
But, from the education standpoint of it, Yeah, we see the issue with social media taking kids' focus away from what they're supposed to be learning in school. They want to be on Twitter and TikTok and all those things. You talk about the mental aspect of it at the young age, but even at the teenage age where you're still so vulnerable to addictions forming. I would like to see a greater push for the public education system to remove cell phones
Absolutely.
From kids in the educational setting from that 7:30 bell till the 2:30 bell, because I would venture to say if we did that right now and force kids to do that, we'd have an uprising on our hands.
Yeah, and Mark, a coach, he's a teacher in a high school here in Jackson Northside High School, and he's been a teacher for several years. So he sees these things. Is there would you recommend an age appropriate for a kid to start to have an iPhone? Because I know I see parents, my sister, my family members, and their kids have iPhones. I mean, almost in the cradle.
This is a great question. It's one question that I don't have a universal answer for, and I'll explain my reasoning for that. Every child is unique, their maturity is unique, and their circumstances are unique. So, what I always say to parents is, a child, until they leave your home, should have limited access on their smart devices, and the access should be controlled by the parent. Just as in the printing press days, before all of this, we used to restrict the books we would bring into our home. Is that not true?
Yes, that is true.
Why is it we used to restrict the books we'd bring into our home, but today, if you suggest that I will restrict what's on my child's cell phone, I'm suddenly talking about something that is against their rights. You know what is against their rights? Is the loss of innocence that occurs instantly, and it occurs only once. I would prefer to preserve a child's innocence over the joy of seeing them smile because I gave them some candy. What do you guys think?
Yeah, well, I don't know how anyone can argue that. Mark Stross is our guest. He's the author. The book is out now. It's entitled Killer Tech and the Drive to Save Humanity. Now, you can pick this book up on Amazon, at Barnes & Noble, and everywhere that books are sold. And that pretty much is Amazon and Barnes & Noble. I miss the bookstores. We have a Barnes & Noble here, don't we?
No, we do not have a Barnes & Nobles. We have a Books A Million.
Books A Million, that's the one that's left here in Jackson. Mark, it seemed like of course, I wasn't alive during when I was born in '68. The '60s, I've read about it, and I've talked with people that followed politics back in those days, and they say that the real difference was that people still had jobs. Although the times were very difficult. I mean, when murdering the president, murdering his brother, MLK, and the list goes on, that people didn't give up hope in the country, and they still had a feeling that the government was trying to do the right thing. Today, people follow politics like they follow football. They root for their favorite team. And if we, for example, if we covered politics, or if we covered sports, I should say, the way that politics are covered, then you would have had Kansas City beat Philadelphia in the Super Bowl last year. You would have had ESPN report that Kansas City won the Super Bowl. Then Fox Sports would say, no, if actually Philadelphia won the Super Bowl. And then the fans would fight amongst themselves about who really won and presenting alternative facts. But sports fans, they don't put up with that. They wouldn't put up with that for half a second. But those same people will put up with, that's the way that news is covered in America. Alternative facts, even though it's on film and on audio, to dispel what these politicians say, they still go along with it. It's cult-like. And they use technology to reach more people than ever today. I don't know what you do about that, Mark.
Well, it's human nature. People always ask me, so why can't politics be civilized? And then since I grew up in Europe, I said, well, have you ever watched the English Parliament? Have you watched the Canadian Parliament? When the politicians go and devour each other. It's been a gladiator sport, politics forever. I mean, that is what politics is. It is actually devouring a different opposing view and trying to make your view reign supreme. But what is different today is with social media, is you literally have brought us, the people, into the actual boxing match in real time. So now, because we like to bet, we like our team to win, and with social media's ability to bring us right into the lion's den, we're watching the activities occur. What's even worse is as we're watching the activities occur, we have these little pesky people called influencers, and most influencers have not really succeeded in the industry. What they are is they're a critique or a critic to some industry, and what they do is they come in and they're a cheerleader because that cheerleading gains them financial reward, and their job is to cheerlead for a side. Now that side is what is tearing us apart, because in the old days, we used to agree that we used to be able to get together at Christmas, not every family, and I'm not meaning everyone, but we could get together and put our political divide aside. But now when you have a device that's right in your face that gives you a funnel that's dedicated to your bias, I want to repeat that to everyone. Everything you're looking in your cell phone, you're looking because you've trained your cell phone what you like, and its mission is to keep you on that platform as long as possible. So it's what you like is making you watch yourself in your own reflection. If you think of the glass on the phone, you're watching yourself get yourself addicted by your own bias. And that is why we're falling apart, because we're rooting for a team. Now it's you're the red or the blue, and we're seeing the team results in real time, just like the sports. And we're now not realizing politics is not a gladiator sport. Politics is a sport in which we, the people, need to work together to create something better. The reason part of it exists is for the ideas to come together and to meld into policy, to become policy, argue it out. But we seem to not want to argue anything out into policy. We don't want to argue to create. We argue to destroy. Thank you, social media. That's what you've trained us to do. Argue to destroy ourselves instead of arguing to create.
And people will say things on social media they would never say to your face. It's the bravery of being out of range. And I think groupthink is very dangerous. And man, it doesn't matter if you love unicorns. If Coach, for example, if you were absolutely in love with unicorns, 20, 30 years ago, you'd keep that to yourself. But now you can find a group online that loves unicorns as much as you. And it will give you all the backing that you need to say, hey, I'm a part of this group. And I think that's happening to us a lot, too.
Why you got to go tell my laundry for, man?
I shouldn't have used that. I realized that was a true story, and I probably should.
But no, you're 100% right. If we can think something up, there's probably somebody else out there that has thought of that too, right? No new thing under the sun, so to speak. Then all of a sudden we have this emotional support group, Doc, that
it says it's okay.
Gives clout to that.
Right.
But is that a good or a bad thing? Are for example, transgenders finding help and support with social media, whereas before they would be ostracized and be in conflict?
Well, we're talking about
both ways.
We're talking about 1/10 of 1%.
Yeah, I know.
And we have politicians that are using these people to divide us by saying, here they come for our guns and our Bibles, and they're trying to recruit kids. And there's a law in Arkansas that was passed to outlaw drag queen brunches. I've never in my life seen a drag queen brunch, and I've been to South Beach, Miami.
No, but what I'm saying is there's a good side to that, and it allows people with unique or diverse interests to come together and find support with each other.
Yeah, that's true too. Yeah,
Yeah.
there's good and bad. And Mark, we're out of time today. Can we do this again? Will we have more time? I have so many questions for you. And the book is tremendous focus. It's called Killer Tech and the Drive to Save Humanity. Mark Stross is the author of this book. Now you can find it on Amazon, and you can find it at Barnes and Noble and everywhere that books are sold, and fine bookstores everywhere, essentially. And Mark, I always enjoy chatting with you. And I'll follow up with you because I'd like to have a little more time with you because we just have scraped the tip of the surface. But thank you for your time, Mark. Appreciate you calling in.
Thank you so much.
Have a great day, Mark Stross. And that's a tremendous read.
Yeah, it sounds like it is.
Yeah.